Hello, and thank you for taking time to check in. This is Mayor John Hamilton, and I'd like to reflect together on where we're going and how far we've come as a community dealing with COVID-19. I'm speaking to you from my home, continuing to physical distance, following health protocols. Let's take a moment and think about our past 10 weeks and progress we've made. 10 weeks, is that really all it's been? Since our world was upended. It was March 11th when the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic from the coronavirus. And since then, every day has brought new facts and new challenges. We've seen fatality counts rising and employment falling. We've seen hospital wards fill up and streets and workplaces eerily empty. It's been 10 tough weeks around the world, around the U.S., and right here in Bloomington. People have gotten sick, some desperately, some fatally. We've lost family members and neighbors. Thousands have applied for unemployment. Tens of thousands of students left early for hometowns. Hundreds of local businesses and nonprofits have shut down or trimmed operations. Stress has hit many very hard, just over the past 10 weeks. But this is Bloomington. We have stepped up and stood up and held together magnificently in these 10 weeks. For that, as your mayor, I want to say thank you. First, to our healthcare workers, thanks to all of you who risk your lives to save ours. From hospitals to clinics to senior care centers to pharmacies to ambulances, every day you show up to work and you are heroes to us. We all owe thanks to the people who work every day so the rest of us have the essentials. Our first responders who've kept on the job 24/7, police, fire, and dispatch answering every call. Utility workers keeping our water flowing, our lights and heat on, our televisions and internet live. Everyone keeping us fed. Growers and pickers and truck drivers and shelf fillers and sales clerks and cooks and distribution legions. Everyone keeping commerce moving. Bus drivers and postal clerks and delivery drivers and bank tellers and mechanics and construction workers and janitors and phone answerers and plumbers and on and on. These 10 tough weeks have made crystal clear how many people work essential jobs that are too often taken for granted. In compensation, in dignity, and in respect. Let me add a special thanks to everyone who entertains us, artists who sang or danced or acted or just were online and on social media with crazy new techniques to help keep us sane and grounded, even laughing and crying as only art can. I've found art and creative people seem more important than ever in these oh so unusual times. As your mayor, I express a special thanks to my fellow 700-plus city workers, all of whom have kept working during these 10 weeks, often in challenging situations, keeping our city going every day. Sanitation workers, animal welfare workers, construction inspectors, pothole fillers, tree removers, parks maintenance crews, housing inspectors, and grant makers, and check writers, and parking officers, and water main fixers, and managers, and accountants, and on and on. You all have done Bloomington proud in your dedication and professionalism. Just as an example, one resident told us after the big early April storm blew over trash and recycling bins left out for pickup, leaving a terrible mess, it was none other than Rhea Carter, the director of sanitation, who went out at 5 a.m. to start cleaning up folks' front yards. The resident who observed her told us that inspired him to follow suit, and he spent the next 3 hours picking up trash too. That's above and beyond, and emblematic of all your commitments. Thanks, Rhea, and thanks all of you. Our teachers deserve special thanks, as they suddenly went from full rooms inspiring and caring for young people to new and strange at-home learning plans at a distance. Teachers who give their heart and soul to their students every day had to figure out how to keep thousands of our young residents learning and safe in all new ways. And finally, let me share a big Bloomington thanks to all the parents and grandparents, our families, who often upended their own work and family lives with different work hours or no work hours, with kids now home, not at school, jumping in whatever it took to keep things going. Camp counselor, teacher, nurse, coach, music teacher, scientist, you name it. Families adjusted to this new world over these 10 weeks, and so many have done so splendidly. Maybe even some of us learned new grammar rules or math equations or science facts we never knew. If you haven't felt personally thanked yet, let me thank you and all Bloomington residents for your extraordinary caring for each other and our community during this time. The creativity and jumping in to help have been inspiring. We've seen drive-by parades for returning military service people, retiring professors, teachers we miss, and physically distanced birthday parties. We've seen neighborhoods set up treasure hunts for little ones to find teddy bears in windows or flowers in surprise bouquets. We've seen Bloomington police officers take turns reading bedtime stories online. We saw quilt makers retool to churn out tens of thousands of masks for Bloomingtonians. We saw a local distillery known for craft cocktails cook up barrelfuls of hand sanitizer for free distribution. We've seen dozens of restaurants commit to providing free meals that volunteers distribute weekly through the Monroe County Food Train. We've seen little surprises to delight and boost each other, pop-up Christmas lights, trees full of balloons, and yard signs for graduates. As these countless individual stories were happening, of course, local institutions have been essential too. For many weeks, the city government has worked in tandem with county government, including the health department and IU Health and Indiana University, to coordinate health efforts locally. As a community, we have successfully flattened the curve and protected our healthcare workers and systems from a calamitous surge of patients. 10 deaths in our county is 10 too many, but it could have been much, much worse. Our local efforts have paid dividends in more people alive today. We've seen other damage as well. Local restaurants, arts and humanitarian groups, and so many small businesses have been forced into very rough waters. I asked several community leaders to develop a plan to help preserve jobs and these employers. The Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce, the Bloomington Economic Development Corporation, CDFI Bloomington, the Mill, and others worked feverishly to assemble a plan. And within 30 days, they put together $2.5 million in local funds for small, low-interest loans and grants to help keep employers afloat. As of today, just about 60 days later, already some $1.3 million is on the streets of Bloomington helping scores of businesses and nonprofits. That's fast and great work, and we all owe that community-wide team our thanks. In March, I also convened a task force of other community leaders to help address pressing safety net needs for shelter, food, and childcare. This group helped establish one temporary new, roomier shelter for those experiencing homelessness, and a second new shelter at a vacant motel for those needing to isolate after symptoms or a diagnosis of COVID. This group coordinated childcare centers for essential workers and critical support for emergency food supplies needed locally. The group is also recommending future steps to help us be a more resilient and responsive community. We've all learned, I hope, how critical our safety net is to help those on the edge of or in homelessness, those facing food insecurity, those living with the stress of poverty or uninsured illness, or a loved one battling substance use disorder. Thanks to all who weave and repair that safety net every day. Individuals and institutions all across our community are working together to get through. Like a farmer's market that's learned to operate online and in 2 different locations thus far. And that's what it takes. Time and time again, our community has come together and shown up for each other, offered a hand, nourished the better angels of our nature. We can hope and imagine that through these 10 tough weeks, we've seen a path forward, a better course ahead, because we've learned how interdependent we are, how much each of us depends on so many others. As one senator put it, we all do better when we all do better. I won't talk now about that big picture, wide-angled course ahead. I'll come back to that in a few weeks, but I want to close by thinking together about how we navigate the specific continuing challenges of the pandemic over the next weeks and months. Governor Holcomb has outlined a 5-stage reopening plan, hoping to eliminate virtually all health-based mandates by July 4th. He announced Stage 2 entering on May 4th and has directed Stage 3 to begin on Friday, May 22nd. I personally am very concerned that this schedule is too aggressive and isn't adequately justified by health data. We will see. Here in Bloomington and Monroe County, we've gone more cautiously, as our local health indicators told us that we weren't ready yet. I'd like to publicly thank our health professionals for taking the road they have, attending to our local data and our local health with dedication and integrity. We entered Stage 2 just last weekend and will stay there until at least the end of May. So restaurants, shops, and hair salons are reopening in modified ways, and small gatherings have been permitted, among other changes. City operations have continued uninterrupted during the crisis. We will continue to encourage those who can to work remotely and to contact city services by phone or online if possible. But visitors who need to will be able to conduct business in person starting Tuesday, May 26th, as we reopen City Hall and other city facilities to the public with significantly different protocols. I do have reservations about relaxing restrictions too fast locally. Our local health authorities have made data-driven decisions, looking at declining daily cases, declining hospital admission rates, and good capacity to serve patients, as well as increasing local testing and contact tracing. But we know that we don't know enough about the level of infection in our community, and that worries me. Local testing is increasing, but it is still focused on those showing symptoms, and we still need many more tests, and ultimately, of course, treatments and a vaccine. Last month, a statewide study tested nearly 5,000 randomly selected Hoosiers, and just under 3% had either active or previous presence of COVID-19. That number is 11 times greater than the percentage of individual Hoosiers who'd been identified by state testing thus far. That study also showed that nearly half of those testing positive had no symptoms, likely never knew they had the disease or were infectious. That tells us much more testing and tracing will be critical to monitor and manage the pandemic. And it tells us we really need conscientiously to continue things we know work. Physical distancing, face covering in public, hand washing, staying home when symptomatic. It reminds us that any of us could be infectious without knowing it, as could anyone we're near. There's a pledge I hope you'll take to follow these basic guidelines you can find online. So yes, in our community in Indiana, you are now permitted to dine in a restaurant, get a massage or a haircut, go to a shoe store or a small party. But maybe a grandparent once said to you, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. Please be careful. Of course, especially if you are at higher risk, but all of us. What we do, how we behave, will determine how and whether this deadly virus spreads more among us, and how we can continue to move incrementally, safely, toward a better future Bloomington. Employers and institutions are in rough waters, we know. Let's each support them responsibly, as additional support comes from governments. Online ordering and curbside pickup are excellent options. Outdoor dining is safer than indoors. Delaying potential exposures, even just for a few days or a week, can matter. And thank and respect those workers on the job every day. One clear lesson of this crisis has been our connectedness. For better and for worse, you might say, for this virus exploits our physical connections. But, as we've seen, our social connections, our caring and stepping up and volunteering together are also a fundamental source of our strength and will be needed for our recovery. Thank you all for how well you have handled these past 10 tough weeks. Bloomingtonians have to keep caring for each other and embracing the future. We will get through this together, yes, but make no mistake, we have hard choices and big challenges ahead of us to help Bloomington navigate our own rough waters. We all will need to rise to meet that challenge so Bloomington can be the inclusive, equitable, sustainable, successful community that we want it to be. Keep taking care of Bloomington and keep taking care of each other. Thank you so much.